Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Odyssey podcast, where me and my brother trek through cinema on a quest to find the best films ever made. This season, we begin our journey by counting down the AFI top 100 films of all time. So come and join us as we talk about Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. So, Randy, we got to watch a 1927 silent film today. Thoughts?
This was pretty good. It was
Right?
pretty good. I liked it.
Yeah, it was a lot better than I thought it'd be.
Really?
A little bit. 1927 silent film.
You didn't have high hopes?
Usually silent films aren't totally my bag. There's like a handful I'm like, okay, I like them. And this one I was like, alright, it's directed by the same guy that did Nosferatu. I like Nosferatu. Then I watched it and I'm like, no, this movie's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really pretty, actually.
Yeah, honestly, it's I would honestly recommend like photographers or just any cinema person watch this like out of the gate.
You think so?
I think so. I think just how it uses like visual language is really, really advanced for 1927. It feels kind of modern in like weird ways.
It does, yeah. I would have to agree. Like, the way, like, he's, like, sitting on the bed thinking about, the other girl, you know?
The harlot from the city.
And it superimposes, like, her, like, caressing him and stuff. Like, that was good.
When they have the fantasy about the city and it like superimposes over them like a literal daydream.
Yes.
And I was like, there's some like really interesting shit going on here visually, and it's like there's barely any title cards in the movie, which is another weird thing. I think there's like 10 maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Honestly,
they're still able to convey like what's going on in the movie pretty easily.
Yeah, honestly, most of the title cards were almost like I don't think we really needed all those title cards. I'm like, you can almost watch this without any title cards and you get all the context. Yeah, there's a sign of
kinda, but there's like those flashbacks at the beginning.
Yeah,
which
I
are
guess the flashbacks at the beginning are a little sketch. You need a setup for those.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I mean, the movie's really good.
They're really good, yeah.
Where do you want to start on this one?
Well, I mean, we haven't even gone over the plot.
Oh, well, the plot. Be ready for this. It's about a man and his wife who get torn apart by the woman from the city. And when he tries to kill his wife to be with a woman from the city, he can't go through with it. And then the two of them go off and rekindle the romance in the city. And then shenanigans ensue.
Yep.
But kind of.
Yeah, but basically.
Basically.
The wife almost drowns at the end.
Almost drowns at the end. Comes back because, we have to have a happy ending.
Yes.
Actually, this was back in 27. They didn't need a happy ending. They wanted a happy ending. Wanted it. Yeah, this was before we had all the censorship boards and shit.
I see.
Yes. But yeah, this one's directed by F.W. Murnau. He directed Nosferatu in 1922, so like 5 years before this. And unfortunately, he dies about 4 years after this in 31.
Okay.
So this is his first Hollywood film. And this one actually bombed so bad it almost killed his Hollywood career.
Really?
Yeah, but it had probably the best critical reception of any film on our list so far.
Oh, really?
Because out of the gate, people said, this is a masterpiece of cinema.
Really?
On release, people were like, this is the greatest film of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, rediscovery. It's out of the gate. People were like, this movie's amazing. It also almost disappeared from existence.
The hell?
So, this is a weird thing about a lot of film studios and cinema, but a lot of studios just catch on fire for no reason.
Are films that flammable?
Back then they were. They made on the fucking nitroglycerin.
Shit, alright.
But yeah, so the Fox studio lit on fire and it burned the original negatives. They were able to kind of jerry-rig it together from a bunch of 35 prints from a bunch of theaters.
Okay.
And got a complete
like you
film.
do.
Like you do. So they were able to like find the film. That's why our transfer that we watched today looked a little iffy in some bits.
Yeah, sure.
You can tell it was run through a washer once or twice.
Run through a washer. I don't know if it's that bad.
But yeah, other than that, this is also the first film to, I guess it's the only film to win the Academy Award for Unique and Artistic Picture, which at the time was a parallel award to the Best Picture. And it also won the first Oscar for Best Actress and Cinematography.
Wow.
Yeah, this movie had high praise. A lot of high praise. So, the actual movie, though. Anything on the actual movie?
Well, I thought you were going to say something. I was pause champing for whatever you were
Pause
about to say.
No, I'm throwing it back to you, Randy. You know, I did the drum solo, and I'm throwing back to you to pick up.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I didn't hear any drumming.
Take it, Scotty.
Take it, Scotty. Well, I mean, the movie is just very visually appealing. It has a lot going for it for a movie from the 1920s.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen worse edited movies on this list already, and this movie came out like 50 years before those movies did.
Yeah. This movie also, pure visual storytelling. There are movies now that can't do it nearly as well as this movie.
Oh gosh, no.
Which is kind of, I almost want to say shocking to a point, because this movie is getting close to 100 years old.
Well, I think this movie just does it so well because, you know, it's a silent movie. It has to show and not tell a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it gets very few title cards to just straight up tell the audience what's happening.
That was actually an intentional choice by Murnau. He fucking hated title cards.
Did he really?
Thought they were a scourge of cinema.
A scourge of cinema.
FYI, cinema as a dramatic art form had only been around for like 6 years, and this guy was already a film snob. This motherfucker, already a film snob.
Well, I mean, I can see why. He was so far ahead of, you know,
Honestly.
probably the average at the time. I mean, I don't know what the average 20s film looks like.
It's pretty above average. Damn fine above average.
I mean, yeah. I mean, this movie is even higher on the BFI's list.
Yeah, on this list, it's at 82. On the AFI list, it's at 82. But on the BFI list, it's at number 5.
Yeah.
Is this the best movie we've seen so far?
I'm not sure about if it's the best movie we've seen so far, but
we'll get you down on the AFI breakdown.
No, but we can talk about it right now. Okay, so this I'm not gonna say is the best movie I've seen so far, but for its time, probably the best movie I've seen so far.
Of its era.
Well, it's just like because you expect the movies to be able to like do more as more time goes on. Like Toy Story is an entire movie made out of CGI. Like there's not even a hint of that in F.W. Murnau's like mind to do an entire movie out of only special effects. You know, it's not a thing.
Yeah,
but you know, we expect more from these movies as time goes on, and so Sunrise, it's a silent movie. Sound in movies isn't really like a thing yet. I mean, this movie has like a score.
This is technically the first film to ever have a synced score to the picture. So the score was actually recorded from the studio, sent out with the film, and they played it with the film. It was a real sync score. It's the same thing they did with the Jazz Singer. And this predates the Jazz Singer by about 2 weeks. This is technically what sound would have been like if the Jazz Singer didn't decide to sing talking.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, Jazz Singer decided to do like dialogue bits with its music, and Sunrise did it with like, oh no, we're just doing this full orchestral score and all this stuff through the film, and it's sent out with everybody. We're not giving people sheet music.
Yes.
And the music in this is also kind of banging.
It's really good, but I mean, I'm just saying like this movie for its time is probably the best movie we've seen on the list so far. For its era, for what it had access to, like just blown out of the water, just amazing for its time.
Yeah. So, do you ever watch silent films? Do you have any context of silent films at all?
Not particularly, no. I don't even know if I've watched another silent film. Have I watched another silent film?
You ever seen Phantom of the Opera, the silent version?
No.
Captain and Dr. Caligari?
Nope.
Metropolis?
No.
I'm running out of shit real quick, Doug.
I've not seen basically any silent films.
Okay, well,
this was a good introduction. It was good. Although I kind of doubt that there's going to be nearly as many other silent films as good as this.
I mean, there are more famous ones, which is weird. Like Metropolis, that's done by Fritz Lang, the same guy that did M.
Yes,
that one's probably one of the most famous silent films.
I mean, like Charlie Chaplin movies.
Oh yeah, all the Charlie Chaplin movies are. Yeah, City Lights, Great Dictator's not a silent film, but like City Lights, Modern Times, Gold Rush, all those are great. You ever seen any Charlie Chaplin? No. Maybe a bit.
Nah, of course.
Okay, well, the reason I ask is the acting in this is so different than acting now, but I found it like
it's not
really
that different.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Because I feel like their movements are a lot different, right?
I think they're a little
portrayed.
exaggerating a bit, but like not as much as I would expect.
It feels a lot like theater,
Yeah.
right? Where it feels like they're trying to like pantomime to the back row a little bit.
Well, they're just trying to make sure like the message gets across, right?
Mm.
Like, I think it's probably like compared to like other silent movies. Obviously, I haven't seen very many, but
Yeah.
I'm saying that probably compared to other silent movies, it's probably dialed back a bit
You'd think
because
so?
they have that score behind them to like kind of like
relay
yeah.
a lot of emotion.
Which, I mean, they do a good job with the score relaying emotion in this movie, especially, like, when he's calling out to the ocean.
And there's an actual, like, musical cue.
Yeah, there's, like, a
syncs up with
horn
it.
that goes with, like, his calling out to the ocean.
I guess the acting in this is probably a little bit more, or a little less big than other silent films. But, you know, they're very engaging in their performance. But the other thing is music and these actors syncing up so well. Like, music in cinema, people say that, you know, half the movie is the sound, and this kind of really portrays that, because I can't imagine how this movie would play without the score. I don't know if it would play nearly as well.
You said it could play well without the title cards.
Well,
why not without the score?
Dude, the score is so instrumental of this. It's called The Song of Two Humans. Not the
True.
pantomime of two humans.
Shut the fuck up. But no, that is true. It is a song of two humans. But I think it could work without it, but like it's one of those things where it's like, but why would you?
Yeah.
It's like, why would you do the movie without title cards? It's like, why do that? You know, it's people do like boast about some movies. Oh, you could watch this movie without any sound and you would like understand it and whatnot. But why?
to flex, to show that you are a superior cinematic artist. Sorry,
cinematic snob.
I was
really
doing my Murnau impression.
Oh, okay.
You know. He's a very weird German guy. He's kind of like fucking Werner Herzog. Pure cinema.
Pure cinema.
Yeah. But yeah. I have no idea what Murnau sounds like.
I was about to say, were there recordings of this
man? I have no fucking idea, to be honest. Now that I
I've
think
been
about
baited. I totally believed you. Goodness.
But yeah, I don't know, where do you want to just like break down? Because there's like real themes in this. Unlike like Titanic, which was probably a little
light.
Which is weird because it was a 3-hour fucking melodrama.
But I mean,
I liked it, but this
it was a little light
themes.
on the themes, and the themes were pretty like obvious. You know, they were all like class based and whatnot. Well, this one is like a lot about like straight up love, right?
Love, temptation,
yes,
rekindling of romance.
Trust,
a lot about trust,
passion.
Yeah, because okay, the man in this,
yes,
the character known as Man.
Well, there's man and wife and woman from the city.
Yes, so Man, is he a fucking psychopath? Because he strangles a lot of bitches in this movie.
I don't think he's a psychopath. He's just he's at a crossroads in his life, you know, and doesn't know what to do.
And Wayne Brady choked
to choke a bitch.
He choked 2 bitches in this movie.
He did choke 2 bitches in this movie. One of them deserved it.
yeah, that hoe from the city definitely deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's the other thing. The woman from the city, she comes in.
So let's break it down real quick. So
okay,
the man, he's got his wife and a child, right?
Yeah.
But there's this woman from the city who's come recently. I guess she's there for like work, but she's supposed to return to the city at some point.
I think it's vacation. I think they point out that she's here for vacation, but
no,
she stayed too long.
It's not vacation. I thought it said vocational.
No, I think it said vacation.
Did it say? Okay, I was so confused the whole movie. I was like, vocational, like, she's working there or something?
One of Randy's 45 minutes in the movie. He's like, what's this bitch's job?
Wow, what is she doing? But okay, so So the lady from the city, she vacations in this like quaint. It looks like a European like little town.
It looks like a village or
like a village or something. But I mean, I'm assuming this is taking place on like the northeast of the United States or something.
I'm not really sure because it was all filmed on a soundstage or a backlot at Fox Studios.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
It looks really good for a backlot.
Yeah. Oh no, dude! Old school studios were like real fucking good.
Yeah, I thought they were shooting on location for a lot of that.
No, dude, all the city was an entire soundstage or backlot.
Wow.
The village was also a backlot. I think even the lake was done on the set, on like studio grounds too.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, actually.
It's the reason why you come to Hollywood.
Jesus. But so anyways, so it takes place in like this little village, right?
Mm.
And this woman, she somehow infatuates the man, you know, and is trying to convince him to like leave his wife, right?
Mm.
You know, come with me to the city. And he's like, but what about my wife? And she says, well, couldn't she be drowned? And then we have that cool effect, right?
Where the fucking title card, when it says drowned, it like melts down and like it's sunk underwater.
Yeah.
That should look cool, by the way.
That was cool. That was neat. I was like, oh.
This guy, okay, he's doing some shit.
Murnau knows what's up. But anyways, so that's basically the setup for the beginning of the movie. And then, you know, the man, he's very torn between his wife and this, you know, lady from the city. He takes his wife out onto the lake, and then he's about to drown her, to throw her overboard, and then decides he cannot do it.
Yes.
Rows to shore, and she runs from him, and he catches up to her, and they end up having like this thing where like they don't know what to do. You know, the woman, like the man's kind of like trying to like find a way to like have her forgive him. And the woman, she doesn't know what to do. She's a nervous wreck. She's trying to like get away.
Yeah, it's like she still loves him, but she doesn't know what to do now that he's willing to go that far for somebody else.
Yeah, and so she's trying to like leave, but he catches up to her, and they like end up stumbling into like a marriage ceremony, and kind of like rekindles their love for each other. You know, they kind of like realize like, what have they done, or like he realizes like, what have I done? You know, like. I shouldn't have done any of that kind of things. I mean, there's no title cards for any of this, but I'm kind of like assuming from like what we've seen on screen, you know, that he kind of like, he breaks down, and then they kind of have this like romp through the city together, like rekindling their love. They go back to the village over the waters, and suddenly
Dun, dun, dun.
the plot strikes. Deus Ex Machina strikes.
Oh, yes. The wonderful Deus Ex Machina. The storm.
The storm is suddenly here.
Poseidon has risen.
Yes.
And the boat gets overturned. The woman is presumed lost in the lake or ocean or whatever the fuck.
Whatever it's supposed to be.
Large body of water. As he is washed to shore, he calls, help me find my wife. And the hoe from the city is like, ho, you drowned her for me. Yes. Now.
Well, she's like she's watching from like she's like a gargoyle perched on top of some log or some shit.
Which is such a ominous image, because that woman goes from being a temptress and just almost like becomes abstracted visually from being like even like a normal person. She's up in the tree. She becomes this like weird like figure near the end of the movie, and I love it.
And so they go out on the lake to find the wife. They can't find her. You know, she's presumed dead. They go back home, and the man is like crying upon his wife's bed. You know, and the woman from the city shows up, being like, "Hey, like, you did it? Like, snoo. It's on. Like, we escape into the city. You gonna sell your farm for me?" And he goes and strangles a hoe.
Yes. Before he kills her, though, they were like, "We found your wife," and he's like, "Oh, thank the Lord," and throws the hoe to the ground and stops strangling her and goes to his wife.
Yes.
Presumably not to strangle her.
And, you know, the wife turns out to be okay. You know, some old seafaring man found her. He was like, "Oh, I know the tides," you know.
I knew where she would have been.
I looked around the point or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends with
the sunrise.
Well, with the sunrise and the Jezebel
being excommunicated from the city.
Well, she's leaving in like this cart. You know, there's nothing there for her anymore, so she's leaving. The homewrecker, as it were, is leaving the village.
And that's the thing, because a lot of this movie is about passion, right?
Yes.
The man feels like there's no passion left in his marriage. He steps out, finds this girl who is giving him a lot of like, you know, that rekindling that passion a little bit, and then he realizes, well, there's an attraction, but there's no love here.
Yes.
He has love for his wife, and then they go to the city, and then they have, you know, they see love, and you gotta love the carnival sequence. I loved that carnival sequence. There was some actually like good stuff in there.
Well, where they were just having a great time,
and there was a great time. It was so nice.
It was pleasant.
There was a little pig.
No, there was a pig, and the pig got drunk.
Pig got hammered.
The man ended up finding the pig and returning it. You know, and then they got overcharged for some wine or something.
I think no, they're country bumpkin folks, and they came to the big city, and they're charging them big city prices for the big city wine.
Yes, I don't know. It's just a nice movie.
It's just a nice movie.
It's pretty, you know. I like it.
And there's a lot of themes. There's a lot of other things. It's a visually striking movie.
It's visually very, very nice. It's hard to describe what the movie looks like. You kind of just gotta see it, you know, like,
which is fascinating, right? Because we've had some images and things like that we've been able to describe really well in movies we've seen so far, but this one is like, there's not many movies I can draw parallels to this.
No, this movie looks very unique, especially with all the really good editing that they've done.
Yeah,
that is kind of like, I watched this movie and I'm like, I'm not sure how it would look nowadays if they did this type of editing, but it looks really cool.
Yeah,
like with all the superimposing and like the split images and whatnot.
Yeah,
it's like kind of like a unique thing to this era that they don't do anymore. And I'm like, I want more of this, but I'm not sure if they could do it nowadays in the same way they do back then.
I think they could. It's one of those things where I'm watching this movie and I know this movie has probably influenced so many movies that it's,
oh goodness,
that it's like, oh, I've seen this story 1,000 times, right? Like,
yes,
this story 1,000 times, but how the story is told and how it looks is just so striking.
Yeah, it's very, very unique,
and it really speaks to like the genius of Murnau, which is, you know, kind of crazy, because this is the guy that also did Nosferatu, which is 100-year-old film, arguably still considered one of the most terrifying films ever made. And then he makes this, which is arguably one of, if not the greatest film ever made. I can see why people call this one of the greatest films ever made. I don't think there's many movies after it that look and portray and give the same effect and give the same like message and visual like storytelling
with so little.
Good. Yeah,
this movie was made in 1927.
It's also
it comes out in 1927, so it was probably being made in 1926.
Something like that. Well, back then, silent movies, you can crank these fuckers out in about 4 weeks.
Yeah, but who knows how long Murnau took with this movie?
It's true.
Well, there probably is people who know.
Yeah, don't worry about it. And well, the other thing about it, it's like this movie is just so interesting to watch. It's like it's
only 90 minutes long too.
That's really what I'm coming down to. It's so hard to describe why this movie is good without somebody seeing it, and that might be why this movie doesn't have as much.
The plot is pretty simple. I mean, it's a nice story, right? It's not like some of the other movies you get in which, you know, the man ends up off with the homewrecker, you know, and whatnot. It does have that kind of like, it comes back to, you know, the traditional relationship, you know, and it has that kind of that feel to it. But like, that's a pretty basic story.
Incredibly basic. And
it's just such a striking movie. The way it's told is so good. This is like kind of a parallel to like Titanic, right? I'm gonna do this. All right, we're doing a comparison episode.
All right, it's that kind of episode. Let's go.
So, Sunrise, you know, made in the 20s, one of the first films to even have a synced up score, the first film.
Yeah.
And, I mean, was this movie made on a large budget? Do you know?
This movie is so old it doesn't even factor into inflation. All I know is that it didn't make a lot of money, and the budget estimated like $200,000.
And grossed about $120,000, I see.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, this movie probably cost a good amount to make, but like, I'm pretty sure even adjusted for inflation, it's probably not going to be scratching no Titanics here.
Oh, hell no. Probably not even fucking close. This is a $200,000 and adjusted for inflation is probably a $20 million movie.
Yeah. So they both have these very simple stories, right? Sunrise is kind of like more receded in its portrayal, right? It's very precise.
Mm-hmm.
It knows what it's doing.
There's no bloat to
it. While Titanic kind of feels like there's a lot of bloat, that it's using this huge paintbrush for the movie, and it kind of like loses that essence of the plot with it. While this one, it knows that little essence, the little thing that keeps this simple story good.
And I think that is an interesting comparison, because when we talked about Titanic, we made the point that everything about this movie is great, but it feels like there's no soul to it.
Yeah.
Whereas Sunrise feels like there's so much soul to this movie.
There is.
And everything around it, it's like, it doesn't have this really big, stagey production. It feels like, again, you thought it was filmed on location. It kind of looks like they just, like, they went to, like, a random city and, like, just filmed around. Like, it feels so, like, played down. Like, the biggest spectacle is when they're at the carnival, right?
Yes.
And where's the fireworks display and all that stuff. But other than that, it's like, this movie is so just down to earth, real basic.
Yeah.
And it just feels so much different.
It really does. It feels more like you could have a connection to it, you know? I mean, Titanic, it's hard to feel like that strong of a connection to those characters because their interactions with each other are so fantastical. And also how they connect to the world around them in Titanic. Yeah. It feels like they're characters in this play, and everything around them is more interesting than them themselves. Yes. Whereas this, it feels like the characters are interesting, everything around them is interesting, how they interact with the world is interesting, and it's like, it's really hard for me to describe why a woman kind of getting the flirty eyes at a barber shop and the husband taking offense to it is one of the most interesting parts about this movie, because it really is how those two are jealous about the other one and protective about the other one, how they have a real passionate thing together. And then you compare it to, Jack and Rose, where it's like, it's so nice and pretty, but Billy Zane's just a fucking monster. What the hell? At least the Jezebel seemed to, like, she had an objective. Sunrise is just a fascinating movie. It's a fascinating movie. It's really interesting. Very small interactions with the characters. I mean, they're kind of played up, but like the seemingly small interactions with the characters and like how they make you feel about like what's happening between them. Like when the man and the woman, or the man and the wife, go to the barbershop, and there's like a woman there who's like assisting the barber, she's like the manicure lady. Yeah. And she's like making flirty eyes at the man, and he has to like, and you can see like it cuts back to the wife sitting on the bench being like, get away from my man, but like, there's no insert card or whatever or anything like that. It's just, you can tell by the way she's looking. It's a couple of looks. It's how the eyes shift. That's the minimal amount of acting they're doing. And it's kind of like an interesting thing because you expect that reaction from the wife because that's literally what she just came from, right? Is, the homewrecker, because that's what I'm going to call her now, instead of the lady from the city. She's just coming from that same situation, her husband with the homewrecker and whatnot. But then when the guy is trying to like brush up on the wife, there's like a guy on like the bench that sits next to her and tries to like brush up on her, And the man, when he's almost done with his shave, not completely done. He's almost out of that chair. He pushes the barber out of the way, being like, "Hold up, I got to do something real quick." And then he goes up, tells his wife, "Go ahead, honey, I'll meet you outside," and whips out a knife on this guy and takes the flower he took from his girl and walks off. Again, like, I think that guy might be a psychopath, but he's a damn romantic. It's just it's so interesting, like these little things that happen in the movie. There's also more here because you learn a lot about like who the characters are, and one of them is the dance sequence where they bring up, we're gonna play this song. Yeah, I think it's a Midsummer or whatever, and it's called the Peasant Song. Yeah, the peasant dance. And she hears it and she's like, "Oh yeah, let's dance." And he hears it and is like, "No, we're not gonna do this." And it's like she feels so comfortable with who she is. Yes. She's like, "Yeah, we're farmers, whatever, but we're happy. Like, I'm happy who I am." And he's like, "I'm not happy being a farmer or a peasant. I don't like being looked down on." And she's like, "Just as long I look at you and I am in love with you, that's all that matters." And I'm like, that moment is so sweet. The thing is that none of that is... There's no title card. There's no title card there. It's all inferred by how that moment is, how they act to people around them, and it's so good. That's something that makes this movie like pretty unique in my eyes, and that like all of these things are like inferred. It's why it's like so hard for me to talk about, because it's how you feel about the movie, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this isn't such a movie in which we can just discuss what actually happened in the movie. It's all stuff we have to, like, we felt happened in the movie. We felt the characters reacted in this way. We don't actually know, but that's the whole point. Is that we don't actually know. We have to infer it ourselves.
You have to feel it.
We have to feel it. Yeah, exactly. You have to feel it. You have to feel this movie, which is so different from modern movies where you're kind of like told, you know, they kind of beat you over the head with how you're supposed to feel, you know?
It's I call it the Marvel syndrome, where a lot of Marvel movies, granted, there are some exceptions, but a lot of Marvel movies aren't trying to make you feel something. They're just trying to get you along for the ride. It's supposed to be an exciting thing, but there's no deep complexity where you're trying to like infer feeling and understanding from like the cinematic story. This is like that's
this
all
movie
it is.
It's like dripping with that.
It's kind of like music. Music means different things to different people, especially like just pure like classical orchestral music where it's like there's no lyrics. It's just how the music makes you feel. And that's kind of what this is. It's a song, you know. You're feeling it like music.
You're right.
And that's the other thing, you know, love, passion, all these like very deep quintessential emotions of humanity, and the music paired with the visuals. This whole thing is just how do you feel, and that makes this movie really fucking hard to talk about because it's like, you know, how do you feel, man? I'm like, I'm not a fucking hippie. I'm sorry,
but I mean, like the movie feels good to watch. Like it's a very striking visual experience, you know. It's hard to talk about it in a strictly non-visual
in a strictly auditory sense.
In a strictly auditory medium, you know. We can't like talk about we can't like put up on the screen, you know, like the scene and then talk about it, you know. I'll go back to one of the things that struck me the most is like him sitting on the bed, right? And it's superimposing the images of the woman from the city onto him, and she's like caressing him and on his shoulder, and then there's like her face next to his, and
there's like the face talking to him over him, and just she surrounds him. She's everything in his
and then
mind.
He like puts his hands over his head, right, and then she disappears, you know. He's trying to maintain clarity, even though he's being bombarded with thoughts of her.
He needs post-nut clarity, man.
He needs post-nut
Should have rubbed one out.
clarity.
He would have been fine.
But like it's such a cool thing that like people don't do anymore, and it's just like it's they don't say anything. It's just felt, you know how this guy's feeling from what you're shown visually. Like he's being bombarded with thoughts of her, and he's trying to throw them out.
And that's one of those things. That's a purely cinematic thing. Like you can't really do that with other like artistic mediums, at least not nearly as well. It's a thing where it's like this image of a guy, then these images superimposed on him, and they're moving and they're changing, and he just brings his hands up and covers it, and it's like it conveys so much meaning and emotion and thought in just that like that sequence of images, right? And I wonder if that's what I'm gonna bring up Werner Herzog again when he talks about like pure cinema. Is this pure cinema?
I suppose.
If
that's the definition we'll use, I'm all for it.
It really does feel like it's not using any fancy tricks, really. It's just images.
Well, I'm sure for the time, these are pretty fancy.
Pretty fucking fancy, probably, yeah. I don't even think they've figured out penicillin yet. This is pretty fancy. But it's like, this really does just feel like such a pure, distilled, artistic vision of like a cinematic art. And I'm like, just so fascinated by it.
Because you've never seen this before, right?
Never. No, I actually knew basically nothing about it other than a broad plot synopsis. Like, real broad. And I was like, okay. And yeah, hearing it, it's like, okay, it's this like sappy love story, blah, blah, blah. And I watched it and I'm like, I might watch it after this. Like, that movie it's so striking. Like, it's so different than anything else I've seen, which is so weird. Because, like, I can tell this movie has influenced so many stories, so many other films. What is it? Orson Welles, Stanley Kubrick. I
mean, this kind of reminded me of...
They all love this movie.
Well, this kind of reminded me of some of the editing that was in Mulholland Drive by David Lynch.
A little bit, yeah. It's kind of interesting that you can even see, like Lynch taking influence from this. And you can see
which might not even be a direct influence.
It might not be. I know he's a huge fan of Billy Wilder and Sunset Boulevard, And we watched Sunset Boulevard, just not for the podcast, but just like casually.
Yes.
And I can almost see some hints of Sunrise in that, and kind of like this tragic love story going on. It's not so much the same, but it's really
It's got hints of it.
It's like hints. It's like a splash of Sunrise, just a dab of Sunrise in there, and it's one of these things.
And
where
that
it's
enticement
so
too, where in that movie he was enticed by the woman's like money and the ability to like take care of him, right?
Yeah.
Well, in this movie, it's the man is enticed by the like whirlwind love with the other woman and the idea of the city.
He doesn't want to be a peasant anymore. He wants to be a man of the city.
Which that part of the movie is all implied. There's not a single like card that references that or anything. The thought of the man being not okay with his lifestyle, with his living on a farm, and he wants to be a part of the city, that's all implied.
Which is masterful filmmaking, because I think that's intent.
I'm pretty sure it's intended, but I'm only pretty sure. I'm not positive.
That is one of those things where Randy's like, God damn it, write a book so I know.
Well, I mean, like, it's just one of these things where it's like, personally I like kind of mostly clear-cut things, but like, I appreciate when the things aren't so clear-cut in a really masterfully done way. Like that, it's not clear-cut whether or not he is resentful of the farm life or just, there's something wrong or, he feels like he's missing something in his marriage or something like that. We don't know why he's with the lady from the city. We don't know why he's with her.
Is it purely because he's lost a passion in there? Is she just like the foul temptress who can, with her feminine wiles, can pull him away? Is it a thing where she's just a symbol and it's just like she's his way to the city?
Yeah, exactly. But we don't know. But we can feel any one of these things while watching the movie.
Man, this movie's a masterpiece.
It's really, really good.
You want to get to that AFI question?
Yeah, sure. We can move on with that one. I really.
It really sucked because I feel like there's 1,000 things to talk about in this movie.
I really feel upset that we do not have that much to really convey in this episode about the movie, because it is just so much a visual experience.
The worst part is it's so hard to find.
Is it really?
It's so hard to physical copies. The physical copy I ordered has been out of print for like 15 years, and I had to get it from Korea. Yeah. I think you can find it online on like YouTube, but I don't know how good the transfer is, so it might look kind of sketch, and I don't know what the score is on it.
Oh, if it's the original score or not?
Yeah, and it's like, it is a tragedy if this movie ever gets like lost to time.
Oh, Criterion, hello.
Again, first place I looked, but apparently, I guess Fox actually still owns distribution rights to it.
Oh.
I guess they still, I don't know fucking how. This movie's almost 100 years old, I guess. But yeah, I guess there's a few places that have actually released it, but I don't know where the rights are now. But I would hope people go out and find this movie.
Yes, please try and find this movie and watch it. It is amazing. It's so simple, yet so good. It's just one of those movies where it's not so overwhelming. It doesn't try and bombard you with like this like bombastic spectacle. It is just down to earth. It's clean.
It's a human story.
It's a human story. It's a song of two humans.
Of
course.
The symbolism.
The symbolism.
But yeah. So this on the AFI, it's at number.
Another thing we can talk about the symbolism though.
Okay.
I know.
No, I know. I do this all the time where I call it and it's like, no, we're not done yet.
Wait, I got another thing. The symbolism of the sunrise. We've talked about the symbolism of the song.
Yeah.
And the symbolism of the sunrise. The obvious thing being that it's a sunrise on a new day of their
relationship,
of their marriage, right?
Yeah.
And it could be also, it is the sunrise, a new day or a new dawn of a new era of filmmaking. Mm-hmm. Of sound.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. You can even look at it, it's like that sunrise, it's the new dawn or whatever. But they went through probably the darkest time of their relationship. He almost tried to kill her. He almost left her. She was ready to just like cast him aside as just this, philandering asshole. And through that darkness, they rekindled the romance, that love, and they came back on the other side to this new sunrise of like hope and love. And I'm like,
that's even brighter than before.
that's even brighter than before. I mean, the movie starts at this weird twilight, and it's like, oh, it's symbolizing like the twilight of his marriage when it's about to come up with this new dawn with this girl, and when he goes to like do the deed on his wife, and it's a whole different thing. It's a very uniquely interesting movie. But on that note of it being more symbolic of like the technology and like the sunrise of sound, you can even see it like that, because I think at this point sound is you can't rip that away from cinema anymore. They're now pretty intertwined in the DNA of film.
Yeah, now people kind of make people will make a note if there's a lack of it in your movie, and obviously like there's not very many silent movies coming out now.
I know of one guy who still actively tries to make silent films.
Really?
Yeah, they're experimental like art house films, but he actively tries to make silent films. I think his name is Guy Madden. I think that's his name.
But I mean, like stuff like No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Right. There was a lot of use of silence in that movie.
Well, that's the thing. It's the use of silence, but not lack of sound.
Yes,
it's silence, but you still hear like the ambience of the world around you.
Yes,
and things
but
like
even that is a step away from what we're currently at. You know, when it's just ambience instead of there being a score, or there being always dialogue, or always like
something,
always
noise.
No, I'm trying to go for like sound with a purpose. Right? There's a lack of sound with a purpose. There's just sound.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's also other movies. Like there was that one movie about the school of it was all deaf kids.
Yeah, I think it was called Tribe. I think
that's correct.
Yeah, it was a foreign film. And the film had a score and everything like that. But the entire cast was made up of deaf kids, and it was like I think at a boarding school. I
believe so.
And I don't think there was any subtitles. So when the kids were signing at each other, you couldn't tell what they were unless you knew American Sign Language. And that's another thing. Like, sound has become so...
That movie was fascinating. I wish I could go see that movie. I don't know where it is or how to find it, but that movie sounds fascinating.
That one might end up being one of those, like, movies we have to watch and do to obscure on. It'll be interesting.
Sure, yeah. Actually, yeah.
That sounds kind of banging. But that's...
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. But that's the thing with these movies where sound has become so instrumental. And there's some movies, like David Lynch movies, Eraserhead, Mulholland Drive, Elephant Man, like that guy, like David Lynch is so keyed into sound because sound builds your world.
Yes.
And that's an interesting thing. Scorsese is famous for saying cinema is what's in the frame and what's out of the frame. Your cinematic world is what's in the frame, but sound builds everything outside of it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's great.
Countless times in movies where they've used a sound cue to signal something has just happened off frame. When the character hears something, they turn around to look what's happened. Like it's a quintessential thing to movies nowadays, but back then you couldn't really use it.
I mean, even there is actually a few moments where they do have it, where all the cars come together, there's the horns, and this guy's yelling. That was the weirdest fucking thing to me.
Really?
I heard human voices in this movie.
Oh yeah.
People were like yelling. It wasn't synced. Like there wasn't like, oh, this guy is talking and it syncs up with his voice or whatever.
It was more like there was like a crowd.
It was like crowd noise that were recorded in like a studio. But I'm like, what the fuck? That built the world. That built the city so much bigger, because in the village it's just this very nice plain orchestral music, and it's like really like played down like orchestral music. It's like maybe like a quartet. And then when you get to the city, it's big, bam, blasting noise. And then you have the people. You hear voices in there. You hear the brass band and the whole 9 yards.
Even I think the whole thing with the voices not being to a specific person also kind of plays into the idea of the city, where it's kind of like a sea of people, and it's like you don't feel connected to them directly.
Mm.
It's more of like the idea of these people in the city.
A lot of this movie uses ideas and inference, and it's a wonderfully done film, and it sounds wonderful.
Really good. Really good.
Unironically, I kind of want to listen to the score by itself and see how it feels.
It might be a little too much.
I know it might be a little too much, but I really did like the score. Like, honestly,
good.
I thought it was really good. And there is the one where they're in the I think it's the photo guy's place
Yes.
where they're taking the new wedding photos, and the song that's playing is the same song that Alfred Hitchcock used in Alfred Hitchcock's Presents.
Oh, really?
Do 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 do. Yeah,
I didn't even notice.
It's the same song he used, which is fascinating because, again, I'm gonna go on with this. This movie has apparently influenced every great director of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s.
I'm not really surprised.
Like, this movie is just
It's
Kino.
really, really good.
Is this movie Kino?
It's Kino.
Kino.
All right, go for it.
All right, so this movie came in at number 82 on the 2007 list, unseen on the 98 list.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess a bunch of people were probably like, "What are you doing, AFI?"
Like, what the fuck? But yeah, so at 82 on the BFI, it's number 5. It's on the director's poll is number 22. But how is this so low?
I don't know.
Do you think this is like a really weird thing to have so low on this list?
I think so, because it's just so influential and still really good for being made in 1927. Like, there's nothing really wrong with this movie. Like, it doesn't have any real shortcomings.
Is this the best movie we've seen so far?
I mean,
don't make it. You don't have to cement it. Just like top 5. Top 5.
Sure,
best.
it could be probably top 5.
You think so?
Yeah.
Top 3?
I don't know about top 3. Well, because I do very much rate mine on a personal level.
Yeah, how they hit.
How they personally, I felt about them. On a more objective list. Oh, definitely.
You think so?
Yeah. On a less subjective, more objective list. Oh yeah, definitely this movie is probably like top 3 best we've seen so far.
It's one of these movies that I'm like, this has to go up like higher. Like, I
definitely.
I can't understand why it's in the 80s. Granted, we're gonna get to some banger films where I'm like, okay, I can see why this might not make the top 10.
Sure.
I can see that, but like not making the top like 30, 40? That's a little weird to me.
Being in the bottom 20.
Yeah. So, but we're both in agreement. Stays on.
Stays on. Definitely goes up.
Definitely goes up. And I'm wondering if there's what else is there to say about it in terms of its place on the AFI.
In terms of its place on the AFI, just that it's really influential. There's nothing really like wrong with it as a film itself, so it doesn't really have much going against it. Only the limitations of the time.
Yeah, and honestly, even with the limitations of the time, it feels like it feels so modern in a lot of ways.
It does
which is
feel
so
very modern.
Weird. It's so weird to say that about a movie that's so obviously of its time in the 1920s. I feel like I'm watching a more modern film, like a movie from like the 90s or 2000s or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm getting a lot out of it. I don't know why.
Except
I'm fucking loving this
except
movie.
it has more of a subtlety to it than movies from those eras would.
Yeah.
At least I feel.
Yeah.
I feel that, that's another thing we talked about earlier about like the actors kind of like playing up like theater acting, right? Because this is a very early movie. That's how a lot of acting was at the time.
Yeah.
But the movie does have that kind of subdued element to it.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of this movie feels so subtle, so like, again, James Cameron used a broad strokes 2-inch brush.
Yeah.
And Murnau is using a fine detail like 2 brush, just a tiny brush.
He's using 2 hairs taped together.
2 hairs stuck together, and that's what he's using to paint his picture, and it's really good, really good.
I'm actually pretty fascinated by how they did a lot of the editing in this movie.
Really, like the technical aspects.
Yeah, the technical aspects, because like, I mean, I don't know much about how you actually do these things. I'm not the one that went to film school.
Okay, so way back in the olden days, which is these are the olden days. To do a superimpose like that, you had to get literal 2 strips of film them separately. You had to have her on a different background so you can do it properly, and then you had to literally melt the 2 images together, like in a chemical bath, and like you had to be really good at chemistry to do this because you were using basically original negatives. So if you fucked up,
they gotta refilm it.
Yes. So and there's a lot of that in this movie.
And there's multiple superimposes at the same time happening too.
Yeah, there's also another way they could have done it where, and this is really weird. So they get the camera, and then the top of the screen, they put like a black board so it doesn't expose the top of the image. They run it, and they're like, all right, cool. Then they move the board down to the bottom and expose a different thing on the top. And then they run the camera.
I think that's how they did the split stuff, but when, like, specifically that scene that I keep referring back to because I just love that scene.
You're like, it's now my favorite scene of cinema.
You could still see the background through all of those images, though.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like how it's exposed, how much the editor is able to like give into that image, how much they're able to like manipulate it, because it's a pure chemical process.
Whoever Murnau got to do that, like those processes on this movie, freaking master.
I'm gonna check real quick because it might have been Murnau himself. I don't know.
I mean, I don't doubt it. It definitely could have been.
All right, found him. His name is Harold D. Schuster. He was uncredited film editor.
This guy was probably a master of his craft, and to go uncredited. I mean, I guess that was just kind of the way of the times.
It was the 1920s.
He was part of the studio.
Yeah, you're like, oh, you have a job and you're not dying of starvation. Yeah, let's go. It's a fascinating thing. I would highly recommend this movie to anyone and everyone. Right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a pretty universal movie.
Oh, if you're looking at his IMDb, Sunrise is the first thing he's ever edited.
Wow. What a guy. What a master.
What an absolute lad. And it won Best Cinematography, too. And damn right it should have.
Damn right it should have. Although, Best Actress instead of Best Actor.
That one's a little weird.
That was a little strange.
I did really like the actress, though. I thought
she was
good.
She was really good. But I mean, the guy he's the main part of the show.
Yeah, he's the main part of the show, and he's kind of carrying it. But it's another thing where he seems so gruff.
Yeah,
and rough. And
his acting is less subdued than hers. Hers is very natural.
Yeah, weird to say. This is naturalistic acting in a 1927 silent film.
Oh, yeah, in a studio.
Yeah, but that's my. I guess that's my final stamp on this movie. You should go out and see this.
Yes.
Find it on YouTube if you can. If you can get the real score, fucking watch it. This movie is actually one of the best films ever made.
Really, really, really good for how simple it is. It's only 90 minutes too.
Yeah.
You can watch that's like 3 South Park episodes.
Yeah.
Just watch this instead.
Exactly. You'll get a lot out of it.
It's probably more like 4 or 5 South Park episodes, but we won't get into that.
Don't worry about it. But what we will get into is a movie that people have a lot of questions about because it's a Stanley Kubrick film.
Oh.
But it is the only Kubrick film, the only one he did not have full creative control in. And it's the only one he got brought in as a director for hire for. And it's fucking Spartacus.
I can't wait to see it.
Also, I'm Spartacus.
No, you.
No, you.
No, you.
That's going to be a great scene. But yeah, so we're going to watch Spartacus 1960, starring Kirk Douglas, directed by Stanley Kubrick. He was brought on after Kirk Douglas basically fired the original director, because that's how he fucking rolls. And Stanley Kubrick came in and was like, I can save this, and he made it, and it's 3 hours. It's a sword and sandals gladiator war movie.
Oh, I can't wait.
Julius Caesar is a character in this. It gets really good. I've seen it before. Not my favorite Kubrick, but it's pretty fucking good.
I can't wait to do this episode with you because this man's has like 2001 Space Odyssey posters, at least 3 or 4 of them up on his walls. This guy's got like the 2 different biographies on Stanley Kubrick. He's got all the movies.
I'm a huge fan.
This man uses every last breath to fillet Stanley Kubrick.
Fuck off.
I can't wait to watch this movie.
He's a great director, but yeah, I can't wait to watch it. You'll probably get some airs of Ben-Hur in this.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. But that's going to be next week on the Film Odyssey. And if you wanted to keep up with that, you can go to our YouTube channel, In the Frame, on YouTube. You can find the Film Odyssey podcast as well as the Film Club podcast. You can also find us anywhere you can find podcasts. That's Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere and everywhere. And follow us on Instagram at the Film Odyssey podcast. And with that, any last words, Randy?
A sunrise over a beautiful new day of our marriage.
I thought you were going to speak quiet because it's a silent film.
No, you.
All right, everybody. You have a good week.
Yeah, have a good time.